Hello everyone, and today we're gonna discuss about the difference between LEASE, that is the lease, versus hire purchase, that is HIRE. Now when I talk about lease, there are two parties in both lease and hire purchase. The one party is the owner of the asset, owner of the capital goods or the equipment, and this owner grants use, the permit use, to the another person in return of the periodical payment. The owner is known as lessor, and the person who is going to pay the annual installment is the lessee. Now what is this hire purchase? Whenever you get confused between both these terms, just remember that it is not hire purchase, it is the installment purchase. That means one person, again the owner of the asset, will grant the use to the other person, that is the hirer. Now the hirer gets possession of the asset as the contract is signed. That happens in lease also. But what happens when this hirer actually pays the last decided installment? The ownership that the lessor was having in that case, and in this case this owner transfers this ownership to the hirer, and this ownership transfer does not happen in case of lease. So what happens in lease, that ownership does not get transferred, it is only the use, whereas in hire purchase the ownership gets transferred. Now this lessor gives the right to use this asset for the time period that has been decided, pay me the money, and then at the end of the period the asset is mine. You don't have the ownership. So who is the owner forever? That is the lessor. But when I talk about the hire purchase, that is the installment purchase. So the asset is transferred receiving periodic installments. But when the hirer pays the last installment, the ownership gets transferred to this hirer. Now, who is the owner in lease? That is the lessor, and in hire purchase, it is the hirer. So, in the books of accounts of lessor and the owner, it will be reflected as asset. And when the asset is appearing in the balance sheet, you can claim the depreciation on that asset. So, the advantage of depreciation in lease, it is to lessor, and in hire purchase, it is to the hirer. Now the third difference, this lessee will pay the periodic installment. So this lease rental he can claim as expense in the statement of profit and loss account. He can get the tax advantage. But when I talk about the owner of the asset, he is the owner. The asset is reflected in the books of accounts. So what he can claim is the depreciation on that asset. Now lease and hire purchase, there are expenses, repair and maintenance expenses. So if it is lease, now lease are of two types that we will discuss in later videos. The first is the operating, that is generally for short term. So in short term lease, the expenses will be borne by lessor. So lessee is free from such operating expenses or such repair and maintenance expenses. Whereas if it is a long term lease, that is the financing lease, then lessee has to borne these expenses. Whereas in hire purchase, the hirer is the owner. Now the person who is giving the asset has nothing to deal with. So this repair and maintenance expenses will be borne by the hirer. Lease is generally for a long period, whereas hire purchase is for a short period. And the most important point that you should always remember is lease is only the right to use, the asset is not transferred. Whereas in hire purchase, you pay the last installment and the asset is yours. Thank